Well, what's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings with Best Served Podcast here. I have Danii Oliver from Island to Island Brewery in the house. We're going to talk beer as we always do, and we're going to bring Moringa into the conversation. Moringa is the most nutritious plant ever tested, period, full stop. It's also known as the miracle tree, and anybody who's followed me knows that my mother, Marco Gifford, has been in the game. 22 years she's been working with this plant in bringing, regenerative agriculture to the forefront and feeding people through food. Food is medicine, supplements, the whole game. So we're going to talk about that plant a little bit in the context of bringing it to beer, which is Danii's expertise, is kind of overlapping the making of beer straight up, kombucha, bringing botanicals and different ingredients and processes to the craft beer industry. So we're going to get into that a little bit. First, Danii, I want you to kind of lay the groundwork for kind of what I'm just alluding to right now is how are you thinking about brewing, being a brewer, craft beer in the context of also thinking about food as medicine, botanicals, and just kind of give us a little bit of that background.
So when it comes to food as medicine and incorporating into beer, I'm really thinking about the preservation process of how do we take something that is super duper fresh and putting it into our bodies, but then also making it so that it's shelf stable to get to other people, and not in a way where we're pasteurizing, but we're protecting it. All the enzymes, all the good bacteria, all the medicinal, mineral, vitamin qualities to transport to customers. And the way that
For
we've
people
done
who
that,
don't know, real quick, pasteurization, what would that do then to what you're talking about?
oh, pasteurization would destroy all the medicinal properties.
Good. I want
So
to make sure people know.
that's pretty much heating it up to the point where what your body needs to break down the nutrients is pretty much destroyed, because that would allow the product to ferment. So if we made juice and then put it in a package and shipped it off, it wouldn't just stay. It would actually start to ferment in its vessel. And that's not something that the FDA wants to happen. But it's something that I want to happen. I just have to ensure it happens in a safe way, in a way that can stand the test of time. So pasteurization usually is with heat. There is cold pressure pasteurization, which people try to tout as healthy, but it's not, simply because anything fresh and green shouldn't last 3 months if
Got
it
it. So
doesn't
the
have alcohol.
process in which you're actually creating these beverages is important to the outcome. If your goal, which your goal is, and the goal for this Moringa Beer project is to have the end product have as much health benefit as possible. So I want to make sure that people understand that that part of the process is the whole game. That's what we're trying to do. So then talk to us from a brewer perspective. You're making a fermented alcohol beverage. How do you then overlap kind of the goal that you have from sort of the medicinal and health benefits to creating a delicious craft beer product? Where kind of are those intersections? Maybe we'll get into some of the challenges of accomplishing that as well.
So the intersection there really comes from anything that a chef would really consider. It's how do we take this super duper potent medicine and make it palatable? And so I'm thinking about what ingredients we can complement the moringa with. I'm thinking about what yeast would help to, bring out flavors for it or subdue some flavors that we don't want. And then also making sure that there's enough alcohol produced from the recipe that would preserve the medicinal qualities, kind of like a tincture, but we don't want anything concentrate. We want it in a size, a pint, if you will, that's enough to drink and enjoy by the glass as opposed to by the shot. So you're really thinking about balance and flavor and even aroma when you're doing that. And so it's not just simply here, we put it in grain alcohol and we transport it. Now it's how does this become a beverage?
Right. We're not making gin with a bunch of different spices, herbs, botanicals. We're creating a product from the impetus of healthy product and the processes of craft beer. So I like the intersection. Just to give, again, people an idea, ABV, where do you think a beer like this is falling in a range of alcohol content?
Oh, honestly, I
Ooh,
think anything about 6 and up.
perfect.
So we can definitely on the higher side. We don't want to be too low, because we want to make sure that it captures the medicinal quality of it and that it's going to last the test of time. We don't want to have like a 3-month expiration on it, which is what you're going to find with your lower ABVs, because through oxidation that just the alcohol can become volatile and just evaporate off. So I'm thinking 6% or up. If we want, we can do it somewhere in the mead wine range, getting it to imperial with 12. But that would also drive the cost up.
Yes, that's hot. All right.
And we don't
So
want to get people tipsy. We really want to get them feeling relaxed and
yeah.
then have the medicine coming into their body. So that's what we really think about when we look at ABV. Is like, do we want to put you on the couch or do we want you up and moving with a little bit of relaxation?
Yeah, it's interesting. Moringa being an adaptogen means for some people, like my wife Betsy, it energizes her, it gives her energy. Me, who's through the roof all the time, it chills me out. So it's a very interesting the way that the compounds play with your body, where it gives you what you need versus just being purely something that gives you energy or something that relaxes you. So I'm fascinated on the end product. You and I having taste tested hundreds, thousands of beer at this point throughout our careers, where and how the beer not just tastes and the attributes that we usually characterize with a tasting panel of a beer, yet how it actually makes us feel is something that you don't usually test for when you're paneling a beer, but we're going to do that pretty intensely. And I know that you already do that. So it'll be new for me and it'll be another opportunity for you. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to geek out a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit like chefs do, like brewers do. What are the flavors? What's the base profiles? What ingredients kind of lead to that? And so you guys are going to get an inside glimpse into the recipe development process, because this is such a new concept of a Moringa beer. I've never heard of one. Have you ever heard of a Moringa beer before? First?
I have not, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. I even started my own Moringa crop just to brew one. And so when you and your mom hit me up, I'm like, yes,
let's do it. I absolutely love it. The second my mom just texted me Moringa beer, and I said, yep, let's do it. And 47 seconds later, I got a text thread started with you, because like this is exactly the person who makes quality beer and who also has an understanding and a drive to create botanical beers, and Moringa being something that's it's so perfect for this. So I'm excited about that. So let's start there. Let's give people a little bit of understanding of Moringa itself. It is a bitter. All right. So think of a kale salad 5x. Like, it has an intensity, a bitter to it, lots of herbaceousness. I think of it being almost like purslane, which nobody's going to know what that is, but it's like a kind of like more earthy, less green tasting, more dark green to brown tasting, if I can use colors as a palette, than like a parsley. So give you a little bit of an idea, just fresh, clean, earthy, woody, with an intense amount of bitterness, which can play very well or be a challenge with beer. So I want people to understand the profile that we're going to be playing with. So let's just shoot off the top of your head. When you think about Moringa, having used it in smoothies and teas, things like that, when you think about its bitter complexity, where does your head go? Let's just like hot takes. What are the first things you think about?
I'm immediately thinking about how to balance the bitterness, but then I'm also thinking about the IPA heads and how they would appreciate that bitterness right
Right.
off the top. And then if I'm thinking in the lane of those who would drink the IPA, I'm thinking, okay, well, how can we not cut the bitterness, but how can we add aroma to it to make it enjoyable? Because right now, the craze is IPAs. So if
100.
we just
Yeah.
if we run with the craze as opposed to trying to go with something that is more enjoyable to massive people, then it's like, okay, how do we add aroma? What's the right aroma? Do we want to go fruity or do we want to go grassy? Yeah, so that's like where my head is. So it's really like it comes down to who is the customer and
Good.
who should we make this beer for? So when I make non-traditional beers, what I call American beers, indigenous American beers, I think about the people who don't like beer and who don't like IPAs. And so for them, I would balance it off and make it be more toward like a mead, like a dry mead.
Okay.
And then when I think about what's popping, then I'm like, okay, the IPA drinkers, the juice bombs, the
Right.
New England IPA. So really, I think it's who do we want to talk to, and do we want to make this more of a health product, or do we want this to stand up in the beer world?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think throughout this, let's challenge our notions of that. My first inclination right away was hopping. Instantly, I went to where you're going. I'm like, it's a bitter. I've thought of beers that I've had that use things like dandelion, right, which was a precursor to hops, as a way to help preserve and also flavor and create some of that bitterness. So my head went to hopping. I'm thinking about the three different phases of hopping. I'm thinking about bittering. I'm thinking about the aroma stage of it. So that's where my head went right away. You just said the important part, aroma. So knowing Moringa and having utilized it multiple times and thinking about the raw plant and then even a tea, the aroma is going to fall flat. You're going to get tons of bitterness. You're going to get a lot of flavor complexity on your palate. It does not hit up into your aroma as much. So you're going to get like more on the finish, I feel like. So I was interested in aroma as well. It's the number one thing that hops do that dandelion, moringa, other botanical bitters do not do. That's why hops are so unique in their ability to create aroma, which changes the way that it drinks, everything about it. So that was my first thing. The other was the intensity of the color. It will turn things like a murky greenish brown. Like the color can be unappealing at times. So those are the two things that I thought of at first was those. I think utilizing it as a tea was the first thing that you kind of said, almost like using it as part of the water source was very interesting to me because that's how you're going to get significant depth. It also was concerning to me because that's where you potentially are combating that color. And then I thought definitely adding it as part of a hopping regimen makes a lot of sense. However, we're going to have to figure out a way to get that aroma up. So we might have to utilize another ingredient in there, which I'm totally good with too. I think we can have potentially an adjunct or two that does complement it because I'm thinking about even the products that Moringa for Life is creating. Here, I'll give everyone a little look up Moringa for Life while you're on your phone, while you're watching this on your laptop or vice versa. They're getting baobab into the mix, right? Which is from an African tree that has intense amounts of vitamin C because in the drying process, the way you mostly are consuming the Moringa product as a powder, it loses vitamin C as the number one nutrient that it loses through the drying process. So they're amplifying that with baobab. So already thoughtfully, they're thinking about the addition of something to create the complexity of the full kind of formula of the best health conscious way to consume Moringa. So I feel like thoughtfully, holistically staying on brand, bringing something to the mix that does potentially boost vitamin C or also potentially aroma does make sense to me. So as I throw that out there, are there ingredients that you feel like could boost the aroma that still kind of are thoughtful, botanical, or, from the earth, so to speak, versus us, throwing spices and things like that in it?
I think in terms of bring out aroma, we really can rely on the hops for that.
Yeah.
And then we just think about what aroma we want because we know that that is going to work and it's going to work the way we intend it to. One thing that I'm really conscious about when making indigenous beers is that we don't try to reinvent the wheel. So
Okay.
yes, there are indigenous beers that are completely different, but for something like this that's never been done before, to our knowledge, I think it's important that we stick to sort of like a framework of beer,
Love it.
what people know beer as, and then there is this other thing that adds to its complexity and its character. So I wouldn't want to do too much with it. It is interesting to me that you brought up dandelion because I just did a beer with dandelion and lavender.
Yep.
And that needed some time to age, and the aroma from that beer very much is the dandelion and the lavender playing well together. It's much less of any of the hops that we put in. I think we just put a little bit for bittering, but
Yep.
everything else came from those flowers. So that was interesting. But I think that for this, those flowers may be too much.
Yeah.
Because we really want to pay attention to it being about moringa and not anything else. Also, I didn't know that the vitamin C quality of moringa was lost through the drying process.
It still
That's
has massive amounts, yet it is the biggest drop off when it comes to its profile, which I didn't know until recently as well. It was actually one of my mother's students who's doing a new project that introduced that. So I thought that was fascinating. So I think it can play well, and knowing that there's a way to kind of boost it and amplify it and still curate something thoughtful that stays on message, I think was okay. So I felt a little bit less restricted by focusing so much on moringa that we didn't add hops or we didn't do X, Y, and Z. So I think we're on the same page there. Let's make a damn good beer that actually, to me, this is like the introduction. I don't want to make the like uber Moringa geek go, wow, this is the beer I always wanted. I kind of want like you and I who are into Moringa, and sometimes it's like, whoa, that's too much when my mom like cooks with it, like a balancing act. And so I think there's a few things when I think about the base beer. I think we definitely, I feel like, want to keep a small amount of residual sugar in there for body, knowing that it can get a little thin on the palate when you make the Moringa tea. And because it has a lot of intensity and this kind of gravelly notes and things, it can like be thin on the palate. So I feel like body in the beer is something that I thought would be very important. A good amount of carbonation to release a lot of those oils in the hops so that the aroma really bursts, so that they don't stay in solution as much, because then I think it'll be too intensely bitter. That's another thing that really occurred to me. And then knowing its profile, it takes on citrus really, really well. So my head goes directly to like, can we capitalize on Citra and some of the other hops that are like banging right now? To your point, they're rocking. People are loving it. You put Citra, Moringa Citra hopped, dry hopped beer, all of a sudden it creates an opportunity that might not be there if you say, hey, it's the murky, dirty, green, bitter botanical beer, right? To your point. So those are a couple of places I go. I think keeping it about Moringa and not about the hops means we probably don't go, maybe we go to IPA, but it feels like it might be more of a pale ale with maybe a little bit of wheat or oats or a couple things that give it some body. When I'm throwing things like that out there, how are you feeling about some of those ideas?
Well, I was definitely talking to your mom about using a little bit of honey in there, so it could be a
Nice.
honey beer. And I was thinking a more of an old school balanced IPA, sort of like a British IPA, where
More
the
malty?
IBUs comes from the specific gravity, more
Great.
malty. Um, I am a little against using wheat in this particular beer, simply
Cool.
because it
Why is
is a
that? And not that I disagree. Why is that though?
because it's a health forward beer. It's something that we are specifically focusing on the health of our
Good.
customers. And there's a lot of people who are gluten intolerant or celiac. And for myself being gluten intolerant, I wouldn't want to make a medicinal beer that I couldn't even drink myself. So I
Done.
think that
Off the
it's
table.
important to
Sounds
consider
good.
those allergens. Yeah.
Yep.
If we put honey in it, yes, it might negate the vegans, but we do have a lot of vegans, and so I don't think that it would alienate too many folks if we used honey. And if down the line we get people saying, "Hey, we want that Moringa
Right.
beer, but we want it to be vegan," then we can go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I think to your point, the most balanced, most not mainstream accepted, but broadly accepted from a good stream of people that are into Moringa and into craft beer, I think is the best way. Because if we can just make a really good beer that showcases and introduces Moringa, it then gives us the platform to take it down some different channels. That is a vegan version, that is the intensely bitter Moringa beer, or that does become the East Coast IPA version of it, because we do find that it balances really well. And it could be, I've told my mom time and time again, like just get people in, like have people try Moringa for the first time. If that means that there is like 1/10 of the amount of Moringa that you want in there, knowing how healthy it is, they tried Moringa, and it's sales 101. It's easier to get an existing customer to spend more money and to buy in more than it is to create a new customer. So like find the entry point that is actually practical, and then try and like evolve from there. So I'm with you all the way. I think having a beer that's celiac friendly makes sense. I think the honey makes a lot of sense. Keeping some residual sugar in, having the aroma and some citrus notes from hops makes a lot of sense to me. Anything else that you're thinking of? So it feels very much like we have a balanced, more malts driven IPA, good amount of aroma from maybe some citrus notes, and as much Moringa as we can handle, where we're like, it's there, it's present, there's bitterness, there's earthiness, there's depth, yet if you're not that into Moringa, you'd still enjoy this beer. Is this feeling like it's starting to take shape a little bit?
Yes, it definitely is. And right away, when I heard you explain all of that, I was thinking in the spirit of like a lemonade, a beer that has that good summer refreshing friendliness to it. Though we're leaning toward the 6%, I think that with a lemon drop and citra, we
Yep.
can create that. And then with like the sweet tea, like if we condition it with a sweet tea of the moringa and honey, so we've got raw moringa in there, we've got some raw honey in there, that'll create just a little bit of residual sweetness. And I'm thinking maybe even to bring down the pH on it as well.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. I think then also as we're getting into summertime right now, as this is happening, it also kind of plays with like Radler and some of what's happening there as far as like that profile. So I think it keeps us on trend in the sense that the style that we're making are profiles or ingredients that people are familiar with, and then the moringa is kind of layered on there that says, all right, I'm into that, versus something that's totally off base. So I like that. I like this beer a lot. It's funny, you can see me like smacking my lips as I recipe develop. I have such strong sense memory of so many ingredients. I catalog flavor as a profession and as a like driving characteristic of who I am, that I'm lemon drop. Yep. I know exactly what that smells like. Citra. Yep. The honey. Now let's get granular. Honey is a pretty broad scope. Are you thinking alfalfa, orange blossom? What's some honey? Let's get some honey
Yeah.
from the Dallas Fort Worth area. Who's got some good honey down there?
Um, oh gosh, I don't have them in front of me, but it's a place out of Austin. They
Austin.
have really good honey. I think it's called Good Juice,
Okay.
which is weird. They have some good honey. There's a place in Round Rock. They have an orange honey that's really good.
Yeah.
Um, so actually, if we can get like an orange blossom honey, I think
Makes a
that
lot of
would go
sense.
really well. Or an apple blossom. Uh,
Yep.
I don't know if anyone still has apple blossom available. Inventories might be backed up, so we might be able to get apple blossom. I
Mhm.
know New York, Tremblay Apiary in New York. I love them so much. They have a really great apple blossom honey that finishes nice and dry, but you still get the aroma of the honey. You still get that. I don't know how to describe it with words, but it's like there's honey there, but it's not overly sweet. It's not like a Japanese knotweed,
Right.
the really dark, almost black honey. It's not like that. That's like there's honey in
So
there.
intense. I'm with you. I love everything you're saying, because honey is one of those ingredients that I tell people, something that I'm not that into that you'd expect me to be into with everything that I am and who I am and the way that I am about so many things. Anyway, is honey. Honey, like it just so often is so smacking you in the face that I'll eat a spoonful of honey. I don't use honey in a lot of dishes because of the fact that I just feel like it's so intense. It doesn't balance out very well very often. And so I like everything you're saying. So last thing that I'm very interested in now, that I think we have a pretty good base for this recipe that I'm sure you'll get scheduled out and like we can tighten up, but I think it's a really good sounding beer, damn good sounding beer, is color. So I mentioned a couple times with the amount of moringa, it can get murky and stuff. It definitely leaches off a lot more color than hops do, right? So so I'm thinking about that a little bit. You have any ideas to that? Any botanicals that you've used where you've had to compete with the color of it a little bit? And this beer, now that it's taking shape, do you have an idea of kind of the color that we're going to yield from this beer?
Um, that is really hard to say
Of course.
because it comes down to the amount that we're using and how long we steep it for.
Yep.
And then I don't know when we finish it and we put the moringa to condition what that's going to produce.
Right.
But if we are worried about the color it produces, we can always add pectic enzyme, and the pectic
Wow.
enzyme will take all the color out, and we'll end up with that straw color of the base malt that we put in there, or the color of the honey will affect it as well. So probably between straw and like golden, like this.
Yep.
Um, but we will not get green. That much I can promise you.
Yeah,
Moringa doesn't produce as strong a green as something like spirulina does.
for
And
sure.
a lot of the times, green kind of oxidizes out. So you end up with like a brownish color, olive color anyway. Even when it comes to hops, like cellaring beers with hops in it, it's got a nice little green tint to it. But by the time it makes it to the tap, that green is gone.
Got some clarity there. Cool. You're all over it. That's great. I think because if it looks just passes the eye test of like, that looks like a beer that I would drink. A lot of people are making that assumption on the style of beer. So if we're talking pale ale and honey and lemon drop and citra, people are going to get it. If we say it's got some like fresh, vibrant notes, think of like a 6% Radler, they're going to get it. I think those things, and then the eye test, if they go, "Ooh, that's got a nice straw color with a little hint of like greenish orange to it," that's going to make a lot of sense to people. So that feels like it's going to check the boxes that have the most people willing to consume it. That'll give us the permission to go, cool, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Which I really appreciate. All right. I feel like we got a pretty damn good beer. Now we got to get to the dialed recipe and naming this damn thing. And it feels like this is a pretty good beer. How you feeling about it?
I'm feeling great about it. Like you said, your mouth is watering. Like I keep going through the sides of my lips here because I want it now. Like I want to get in the brew house and just start mixing it up and tasting it. And I want to be I don't want to get ahead of myself and assuming what's going to come out from it, because we do have to play with the ratios of the Moringa. I've never worked with Moringa on a grand scale. We're talking about starting with 5 gallons and then moving up to 3 barrels. I've only worked with it at 16 ounces.
Yeah, big difference.
So, yeah, and I know sometimes things don't scale up very well, or as you expect math to tell you it should scale up. There's always a difference when you're working with flavor palettes. So I think we just need to like start getting into what this base recipe is going to be, and then take notes along the way on how it's coming together with the amount of Moringa that we're using.
This is great. All right, everybody. I think you're going to have watched this before this beer comes out because we're just kind of trying to show you guys the journey behind it. Danii also will capture little pictures, videos of kind of the process, anything, maybe even just grab her phone and say, that was way too much Moringa, dial it back. Any of those, we want to give you guys a glimpse into the process because it's a brand new process for us. And who knows at the end of this, if this creates a new opportunity for a new category within Moringa and holistic and botanicals and in craft beer, we want you to know that you were here, a part of that journey, because that's important to us. So look out for more coming from this project, the Moringa Beer Project, with Moringa for Life, with Island to Island Brewery, with Best Served. We're going to bring you guys some stories and some damn good beers to hope. So look out for more content. All right, everyone, we appreciate you. Danii's got to go get to work. She's got more work in the cellar. She's got more beverages to get brewing and fermenting. So Danii, thanks for taking some time.
Thank you for having me and doing this project with me. I really appreciate it.
It's a fun one. Cheers.